check. You guys. Yeah. Volume's really low. Oh wow. This is much better, right? How's that? That's probably better, right, guys? That's probably way better, right? If you guys could actually take a listen to the audio for me and tell me how this sounds. This is going to be a pretty loud mix coming at you. So if you have it up really loud, just take your headphones off momentarily, because just let me know how this sounds over to you guys. Because I do some testing to see what it looks like or sounds like on my end, but I can never tell the way it gets through the mix. It's really bizarre. Take a listen to this for me. Should be all right, right? Cool. I'll turn it down a bit. My bad. Let's turn it down. Yeah, someone was complaining last week that the stream was too low, so I bumped it down a bit, but I bumped it up a bit, but I think it's honestly, this is probably a better level right here. Let's do this. How's this sound?
Now if you're feeling kinda low about the dues you've been paying, future's coming but too slow. And you wanna run but somehow you just keep on staying. Can't decide.
Yeah, a little loud. All right, I'll turn up my vocals a little bit. The dudes are going to be coming on the stream pretty soon. I'll crank that up a little bit. Cool. I just bumped up my voice a little bit on the stream. I'm going to keep it about there. I think it's probably good though. So how you guys doing? What have you guys been working on? Right now, Kenny and Ryan are currently keeping us from getting a little bit started just because they're late and they're in traffic. So tell me about what's going on. What are you guys working on this week? What did you? What was your main focus, or did you guys get Pokemon Go and just play that for the entire weekend? I've been trying to refrain from actually getting that app and just going outside, which is, I don't know if it's counterintuitive or it's a good thing or bad thing. But yeah, we'll be getting started pretty soon. So let's see. That's pretty cool. You've been working on that pencil trick, Nelson. That's cool. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Pokemon Go. Yeah, for those of you guys who weren't here last week and you were either you missed it or if you didn't catch the stream, I showed you guys the pencil trick that we actually use in Mix Wednesday. I can show that real quick again if you guys want to look at it while we're waiting for Ryan and Kenny. Basically, the pencil trick, or the volume automation trick, or the compression trick, whatever you want to call it, manual compression. It's essentially this. notice this is some pretty wacky looking compression. Well, the reason it's wacky is because the way I typically do my compression these days, or my first level of corrective compression, is I actually will take the automation, I'll drop it down that, and I'll trace the bottom of the waveform. It's actually pretty quick. Grab the pencil tool and you just kind of zoom in and you just start drawing. And so far, the actual difference, the way it sounds in comparison to the way it sounds with just like a regular compressor or no compression at all, is pretty much sounds like a completely different singer. We went over this last week in great depth, but you can really understand, a lot about how compression works simply by using this tool and kind of understanding how to get really great control over a really dynamic vocalist. So that's what we went over last week. One of the many things we went over last week. So see what else we got going on here. Mastered a neoclassical recording, tracked 2 bands, mixed a single for an artist, and it sounds exactly like Elliott Smith. That's fucking awesome. You should share that in the group, or when it's released, you should share that shit. That's Derek, right? Yeah, I'm stoked to hear that stuff. Neoclassical stuff. So wow, that's awesome. Must be a difficult. What's the difference between neoclassical and classical? I guess I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to that stuff. Hey, is that Ryan?
Yeah.
What's up, bud? I can't really hear you.
Oh.
I can't really hear you. I just see your face.
How about now? Can you hear me now? No?
No audio.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, I can read lips. That's cool. How close are you to your home? 4 minutes. Nice. So anyways, so last week we did that. What we got? Oh, avant-garde stuff. Okay, so the new stuff that sounds like 100 trash cans falling down flights of stairs. I've heard that stuff before. I went to some Brahms concert years ago, and there was after the Brahms, whatever it was some modern composer, and it just sounded like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was ridiculous. The most modern I can get as far as contemporary classical music is Stravinsky. And I mean, that was in this last century, but anything in the past few years, aside from choir guys or choral guys like Eric Whitacre, I don't know. I've never been able to get into it, just because it's it just sounds literally like noise. Yeah, it sounded modern exactly. That's cool. That's cool as fuck. Yeah, so yeah, we've got some cool stuff going on today. We're going to be doing some audio examples inside of Tools, and essentially today's whole thing is breaking down the mixing myths of today. I made this nice little PowerPoint presentation for you guys, so if you guys are bored by PowerPoints, too bad, because I'm going to have one anyways. But we'll jump between Pro Tools and the PowerPoint, so it won't be that ridiculous. So we're going to be going through some stuff. Lots of stuff that we've been seeing posted on the group that may or may not be things we agree with or things we don't agree with, or there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of controversial stuff in the audio world today that we just felt like needed addressing. And it's not like we're trying to make some sort of statement by doing this class. It's simply another topic for us to discuss and for you guys to listen to and ask questions. Hey, what's up, Michael? Nelson? The Mixing Mythbusters. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. That's that's it. I like that. How you doing, Michael? What you been working on this week? Unless you were working on Pokemon Go or catching them all, because I know that's what a lot of the people were doing. I was in one of my buddies sent me a picture of Union Square the other day, and he was just like this is what people are doing, and this is what people are seeing, right? So he sent me this picture. This is Union Square in New York City. You guys can probably see that right there. I don't know if you can see that. But, yeah, it's a lot of people sitting in Union Square. And this is apparently what it looked like. Yeah, it's hard to see. But yeah, just like tons and tons of people sitting in Union Square just playing that shit. I don't really know what it's about. I did collect a bunch of Pokemon cards when I was younger, but I haven't really done anything with them since. Oh. Which is the correct method to start a mix? Oh. Well, we can talk about that later in the class for sure when Ryan and Kenny get here. Today is more about like, I mean, I don't know if that's really a myth or it's more just a technique. Typically, the way I start mixing, honestly, is just listening to the tracks. No pans, no nothing. I just listen to the tracks. I make my markers. If you guys see the way I do markers inside of Pro Tools, typically it's pretty straightforward. I have intro, band, verse, chorus. There's really nothing crazy about that, but I get all that stuff done. I get all that out of the way and done before I do any mixing. These other markers you see, like 99, intro, 102, 103, 104, all that stuff. Those are different types of memory locations that I set up later in the mix. The only ones that I do set up at the beginning are my reference memory locations. When you do a memory location inside of Pro Tools, you can set them to be a selection memory location. So, for instance, I have a selection for memory location 99. So when I hit 99, it selects the start and the end of an entire session. And what that is, that's basically the beginning and the end of the entire session. And you can see that here. If I do this.
That's sweet.
.99, that selects the whole thing. So when I hit bounce, it's the same exact length and the exact same phi audio. Like, it's the exact same length in minutes every single time. There's never like, oh, I'm selecting this arbitrary length of time to do a bounce. It's always the same thing. That's one of the memory locations I set up at the very beginning of the mix while I'm listening to the mix. And then the other ones I do are also, oh shit, is Pro Tools crashing again? No! Oh, fuck. I didn't even do anything in the mix. That sucks. Yeah, so you just witnessed Pro Tools crashing on me. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for fixing that. Ryan works for Avid. Anyways, the other memory locations essentially boil down to their selection memory locations. Yeah, Nelson, it's pretty game changing.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you should really get into that. The memory locations are pretty much game changing. Are you guys are all here?
Hello?
Let's see here. You guys just muted on my end?
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, cool. What's going on?
Not much. How you doing?
Not too much. I just had to drop someone off at the airport, and now I'm driving.
That's cool.
How's that?
We're actually live in the actual stream.
Yeah, I know. And I was going to comment on that
Whoa.
.99 thing.
You got me too?
Yeah, I got you too.
Yeah, we're here.
It's amazing. It's almost like we've done this before. Like
Right?
80 times, and somehow we still suck at doing it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I like that. Friend of mine, wink, wink, showed me that .99 thing because there's nothing more unprofessional than
What
when
was that?
you send your
Sorry, it was a
client.
Waves ad on my computer.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
You're welcome. Man, I swear there was something you said just a little bit ago that I really wanted to kind of jump on, but since you couldn't hear me, I couldn't.
Oh, yeah? What the fuck was it?
I don't remember, man. It was probably something really, really important, and now it's not important anymore because I don't remember.
I see.
Hey,
So you should be able.
I'm gonna switch to
Everybody should be able to hear Ryan and Kenny about now, I think.
Can you hear me? Everybody?
I think they can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, you want to jump through some of these mixing myths?
Yeah. We can do that. Very cool. All right, so everybody can hear you guys. Awesome. Okay, I was just talking to them about Pokemon Go and all that bullshit.
Oh yeah. There was that too. So, you know, you sent me this picture saying that this is like a bunch of people in Union Square playing Pokemon Go. I saw that picture.
Oh,
I
there's
saw
an echo.
something and I was like, this just looks like people in Union Square the way they're always in Union Square.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what Union Square looks like. It's just like a bunch of people staring at their phones, standing around.
Son of a bitch.
So I don't really find it that weird.
Crazy. Hold on, there's an echo happening on the actual stream. 1 second, dudes.
Yep.
Fuck. There's an echo. 1 second. Echo.
Echo. Still hearing it?
Still hearing it. 1 second.
That was a question. I was asking you if you were still hearing it.
They're hearing it on the stream.
Okay. I mean, I'm not changing anything on my end, so. Anyways, okay, someone says it's good now. All right, cool, great. So, hey, what's up? I'm Ryan. That's Kenny driving, and that's Danny.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And this is
All right.
Saul, being a dog. What's up?
What's up, Dow?
Everybody, say hi. Hi. He does not give a fuck.
Echo. Damn it! I think there's
Saul
still
is
an
like
echo.
the best mixed engineer dog you've ever met, but you've never met him, so actually maybe he's none of those things.
I'm trying to think a good like dog mixing pun or joke.
He's really good at getting it bitey and getting the bark out of the mix.
All right. Yeah. Take it.
Yeah. All right. Apparently there's echo again now.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. Well.
1 second.
Okay. And also, Kenny's really quick.
What's his favorite button on the board? Pause.
That was really good, actually.
I mean, it's not funny, but it's good.
It's funny.
Check. 1 2.
All right. Anyways, so let's should we jump through this? Apparently, this is fixed. So
I don't think it's fixed again. I mean, can they hear you guys?
I don't know. You can ask him.
Let's see.
Can you?
I don't know. Why don't you ask him?
You can ask him.
I'll ask him.
Hey, puppy. My puppy really wants to go out, but I can't take him out because we've got this.
You guys can't hear Kenny and Ryan, can you?
All right, they can hear everyone. No echo.
Check.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Don't break it.
Oh, wow. Well, that's really creepy that they can hear everybody.
Why?
I don't know. Doesn't seem like they can hear everybody. That doesn't look like that on my end, at least.
Okay. Well, apparently Kenny's quiet, so maybe make Kenny not quiet.
Can you make me not quiet?
Nelson tells me I need to let my dog out, but
Aw.
he can go out on the balcony and pee there if he needs to, and then I won't yell at him because it's my fault.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so all right, so the reason this topic came up, the mixing myths, is because there was a posting on our Facebook group that a guy.
Who was it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I usually
Which one of
remember
you
the
was
name-
it?
Which one of you motherfucker? No, I usually remember the names of the people who write like the really awesome posts. I
Yeah.
don't really remember the ones that are like questionable posts that I just don't really believe are factual.
A good way to live.
It's a little weird to be partially in control of quote unquote facts, meaning like we get control of what stays on our Facebook page, right? So if someone posts something and I think it's just inaccurate or infactual or just a bad suggestion,
Yeah.
sometimes it goes away. That's the nice way to say sometimes it goes away. It just disappears.
Yeah.
It's those algorithms, man.
Those algorithms, exactly. Facebook algorithms make it go away. It has nothing to do with me. But anyways, someone had posted on there saying it was a video on how to make monotrack stereo. And basically it said duplicate the track, pan it left and right, and delay one of them.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, that's not stereo, man.
That's two of the same mono track panned.
Well, actually what it said was how to make mono tracks sound like multiple mic'd tracks or something like that, which is even less accurate.
Interesting.
But anyways, so that's where this whole thing came down. So we've got a crap load of mixing myths that are out there in the world today. If any of you guys have any ideas of some of these, because I'm sure you've heard stuff that you're like, I don't know if that's true, feel free to toss it into the chat. I'm sure we could jump into it and have some comments. But that's where this whole topic came from, and let's jump through it.
Very cool, very cool. Now that we have all the stupid audio shit worked out, and I'm not a dunce with whatever I did earlier, every time I touch the audio shit, I just like break it for some reason, and it really pisses me off. So I'm really sorry, dudes, for doing that.
Save the setting, and then never touch it ever
Well,
again.
okay, so can I just tell you why it fucks me up?
No, I
because-
don't want to know. I don't want to know the technicals. I just want it to work.
Fine, I'll sit here and
All I'm trying this by yourself, man.
yeah, I'll sit here and smolder myself.
There was a long time with my mixes where if I got something to sound halfway decent, I didn't know enough about what I was doing, so I was just, if I touched it, everything would go to hell. Everything would go to shit, and
Yeah.
I just wouldn't touch things for a while.
Yeah.
But then I started to learn shit.
Oh,
Whatever.
so he's saying I don't know anything. I
Is
can't
it
learn
that
shit.
like an underhanded burn on?
Pretty sure it was. Then I started to learn shit, and then it all worked out. Thanks, Kenny, for the advice.
I didn't mean it like that, but you took it like that. So
You didn't have to mean it like that because it said it in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was a harsh one.
That's all right.
the eye of the beholder, my friend.
Yeah, I know. The beholder's on fire right now.
Yeah, basically.
With such a hard-
Okay. So now that everything's worked out, let's jump through this stuff. Basically, Ryan explained why we are doing this Mix Wednesday. This very special Mix Wednesday number 75, which is pretty cool. That means we've done 75, or 74 of them, and we're on our 75th. That's a lot of Mix Wednesdays. Anyways, today, breaking down the mixing myths of today. Pretty much, I think it was Nelson who said it earlier, Mix Wednesday Mythbusters or whatever, or Mixing Mythbusters.
Mixbusters?
Mixbusters. Oh, that's way better.
That's good.
Yep, that's
What
way
do you call
better.
That's number one. Dan
Fridays?
knows what he's doing.
Hey, thanks, Kenny.
What do you call it? Stir Fridays?
Stir
that's
Fridays.
Stir
That's way better.
Friday.
All right. Anyways.
Anyways,
let's
Number one.
talk
What do we
about
got?
useful shit.
yeah, totally. Useful shit. All right. So, number one. This was the one that basically Ryan was talking about. Converting your track to stereo results in a wider stereo image.
Yeah.
So, why is this something that people are confused about, Ryan or Kenny?
Well, it's because people post videos saying that it does it.
Okay.
Yeah. Bad information is not good for the world.
Yeah.
When it comes to the internet, especially.
Well, okay. Here's another question. Did either of you guys ever at some point believe that this was truth?
I at one point, Derek's just like, what? I at one point knew about the Haas effect, which I don't really think is this. I think the Haas effect is a very specific effect, but I never really thought of the Haas effect as like stereo. I just thought of it as like a weird, a wider mono. But I never really thought of like a wider, like delaying one side, like straight up delaying it. Like I never thought of it like that. It was never a thing. But I don't know. What about you, Kenny?
I thought about it many times, and I sort of thought that maybe that was a workaround, like really early on, but I knew there was something wrong with it, and I didn't know why.
Right.
That's the thing. Like I knew that it was close to, at least close to making something stereo in some matter of thinking, but I knew that there was something wrong with it, and I just didn't know why.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean,
So I just-
here's the thing: when you don't know what you're doing, right? You see that I have mono tracks and I have stereo tracks, right?
Yep.
Someone goes, "Hey man, this sounds mono. Can you make it stereo?" You go, "Oh fuck, let's make it a stereo track."
Yeah.
There's some twisted logic in that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it makes some sense
Yeah.
if you don't know what they mean, right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, so where do we draw the line between truth and not truth? I guess it's well, you're taking a mono track and making it 2 mono tracks, which a stereo track is kind of like 2 mono tracks.
Yeah, but let's talk
Okay,
about
so then-
functional stereo.
Yeah.
Not
Say
what
again?
technically is a stereo track and what's a mono track. If
Right.
you have the same data playing through both sides, that's still mono, right?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if you have different data on the left and right, it's technically stereo, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, even if that data, the only difference is that the left side is delayed 15 milliseconds, technically that's stereo, right?
Yep.
Okay, but now let's talk about what's actually useful and what's functional.
Okay.
So technically, yes, you've made a stereo track by duplicating a track, panning one left, panning one right, and delaying one of them.
Right.
Yes, now you've made a stereo thing happen, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you have caused comb filtering across your spectrum. You've also chosen to make your track now, not intentionally, but you have unintentionally comb filtered your monocompatibility, right?
Right.
And oh man, there's so much more to that just makes it wrong that it's almost hard to explain. So
Maybe we can just like look at it right here.
instead of doing that, why don't we just talk about how to actually make something stereo
Okay.
out of mono tracks?
Okay. We can do that.
And by the way, I don't see your Pro Tools machine on the Hangouts.
Oh, my bad.
I only see it on the stream.
Sure. I can change that for you guys.
So Dan or Kenny, why don't you start here? What are some things you do to a mono source to actually create something with a stereo spectrum?
I would start. My first line of thinking would be to do what you said was delay one of the sides by a small amount.
Okay. And that's it? You'd stop there?
No, I wouldn't. What's the context? Like,
Let's say you have a single rhythm guitar and a single lead guitar. And you want to put the lead up the center and make the rhythm, quote unquote, stereo.
sorry, you were cutting out. So we have one rhythm track and one lead track.
Yep.
Yeah, I would. See, I don't even think on these terms because I always do 2 rhythm tracks.
Right, but that's because you tracked it.
Give me some direction here.
All right, I'll tell you what I would do. How's that?
Okay, let's do that.
All right, cool. So if I only had one rhythm track and I wanted to make this thing into something stereo, first of all, I'd hope I might have a DI track of it. If I had a DI track of it, as well as, let's say, an amp track, then I would take the DI track and I would create an opposing side using that.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's pretend we don't, and we actually only have one track, a singular guitar that is rhythm, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, I might duplicate it, pan one left, pan one right. Now, at this point, I have basically wide mono, if you will. It's basically still mono, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If guitar parts repeat, I might take the repetitions and like paste them over one another so that we end up with doubled performances of sections.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
Now, the only problem, and this is a pretty big problem when this happens, is that if you can't do that for the entire portion of the song you're trying to make stereo, it goes from being pretty properly stereo to being fucked up mono to being back stereo.
Interesting.
So if you can't actually do that for basically the whole section you're trying to make stereo, there's almost no point in really doing it.
I see.
Right? So
Interesting.
often it's awesome. Every once in a while it just does not work very well. But anyways, okay, so let's talk about in the case that I took this channel and duplicated it. Is that what you just did here?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So in the case I've taken a channel and I've duplicated it, what I want to do is I want to make them as discrete information as possible on one side versus the other side.
Okay.
So I could take one guitar track and pitch the entire thing down a touch, at which point technically it's discrete information, right?
Interesting.
But if I do that, it's consistently discrete information, which is
Okay.
not how an actual double track goes.
Okay.
So rather than just pitching it down, I might put a pitch shifter on it that has a rate of, I don't know, 1 hertz. What do you
Interesting.
think?
That would help.
So pitch shifter, mono.
Yeah. And you can set it to a couple cents.
Okay. Couple cents down or up.
You don't actually have a rate on here, do you?
We do not actually.
Well, that doesn't work. What else you got for pitch shift?
Let's see here. We've got some. Get the little micro shift. That's not really going to be helpful though.
It doesn't have a rate per se. It's not a simple enough one to do with a rate.
Yeah. And the primal tap. I think that's a Sound Toys plugin.
Yeah, but that's got a rate.
Okay. Cool.
So the idea here: set the mix to 100% wet.
Okay.
I don't really use this, so I don't really know much about how to do this.
Okay. Well, let's check it out.
Let's turn off I don't know. Basically, I want to set the rate extraordinarily slow and the depth to like 50%.
Okay. Can we just use the regular delay plugin in Avid Pro Tools or in Pro Tools?
Yeah, but that's a delay, not a pitch shifter.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
So just set this rate really, really low.
Okay.
Set the depth to something. I don't know.
We'll set it to. We'll set it to like 0, almost 0.
Well, no, you want the depth actually to be some actual value.
Okay. We'll set it all the way up.
Okay. All right, cool. So primal tap is actually a delay then, not a pitch shift?
I think it's a delay. Yeah.
Why was it under pitch?
I have no idea. Maybe it is a pitch. No, it is a pitch. Yeah. Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's interesting.
That's really okay. Cool. Whatever. Let's just play that for a second. I want to hear what it sounds like.
Okay. Pan it. So,
Okay, cool. That's definitely got a pitch shift on it.
Yep.
Definitely has a pitch shift. Let's pull
Awesome.
that depth way down.
yeah. Sounds good.
Hit play there. Let's see if that-
We'll go to something that sounds a little bit more like a guitar riff. Cool. Very cool. All right.
Okay,
Next
cool.
up.
So now what you've done is you've created a performance that doesn't match in pitch, right?
I see.
And
Okay.
it's variable, so it's not like it's just off by one amount and just sits there. It's actually moving.
Yeah. The rate is super slow and the depth is like super small. So essentially the pitch frequency, or I'm really going to be bad at explaining it. I was talking out loud for a second, but I understand. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a different performance than the original.
A touch flat, a touch sharp, a touch flat.
Yep.
And that's okay.
Cool.
Great.
What about timing?
I have no idea. I don't use this plugin, so I don't know how the timing here works. But if this is also a delay, it's probably knocking it out of time too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be a pretty not so terrible workaround.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, we're problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a listen to this panned. We'll take a listen to the left side here, and let's just take a listen to see what this verse sounds like. So it is delaying it on the left side by a certain amount. Wonder if we
Let
can
me turn that
just.
Put it down.
Yeah.
You put it to 0. There you go.
Yeah.
Just because let's do delay and pitch as two discrete effects, not the same.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's see about this. Yeah. It's way wider. What's that?
Pause for a second, bypass it, and play again.
Okay. Mono. Fake stereo.
So that for me is step one, right?
Yep.
I might from here put it through some sort of like saturator plugin.
Interesting.
For example, I don't know. What do you have? Do you have Metric Halo Character?
I do.
Cool. Let's use that.
Okay. I think I have a guitar all bus right here.
Oh no. Put it only on that one side.
Oh, okay. Cool. Can do that.
We're trying to make that guy even more different than the other one.
Oh.
Yeah, I just got home, so I'll jump right back in a minute. I'm just gonna
Cool.
jump on my Wi-Fi.
Give it like
Okay.
American Transformer 1 or something like that. Just something that's not crazy.
Got it.
And then just run the drive up. Yeah, there you go.
Done.
Now let's hit play again.
Okay. Wow. Bypassed. That's it, mono. Back in.
How's that work for you, Dan?
It's cool. It sounds almost like too wide, so I feel like if I was doing this, I would bring in the panning a little bit. I don't know if that's something that you do as well.
But let's pause for a second. The
Okay.
concept here was to make them wide.
Yeah. Oh, it's way wider. It doesn't sound like mono at all.
Too wide is never a problem in that case because then you got a pan knob,
Yeah, I see.
right?
Got it. Yeah, that's true. It's true.
So
Well, that's pretty awesome.
now at this point we've created quote unquote discrete guitar parts.
Right.
Because if you were to print these, they would look like a different waveform and all that.
That's true.
If you want to do time adjustment here as well, you can now. You won't necessarily get comb filtering because you actually have different pitch on
I
one
see.
versus the other.
I understand.
If you want to shift it just a little bit more, you can also add time adjustment.
I see.
And at that point, you potentially get even wider, potentially not really much of a change because you also have pitch shifting.
Right.
So, yeah, and actually, Al brings up a good point. Toss up a phase scope and see what it looks like.
Okay. Can do that.
You have a guitar all bus, right? Yeah, just toss it on there.
And there's a coherence. Actually, I'll just look at a phase scope.
Yeah, it would be easier if you just open the scope.
Let's see. What do I have here? Stereo tool. Let's look at Insight.
Sure.
Oh, here we go.
Cool.
Go back to it.
Do you have a correlation going on here somewhere?
Let's see.
Like phase correlation somewhere there? As opposed to just seeing the scope. The scope's fine, yeah, it looks nice and big and wide, but you don't really actually get a proper phase correlation view.
Doesn't look like there's a phase there's probably a phase correlation somewhere in here. Let's see.
Can we use something simpler than this? We don't need to use something that does all this crazy shit.
Sure.
Like, there's totally no reason here. Yeah, but the side, so Quiet House says it's on the side of the scope, but the side of the scope just showed 0 and 1. It doesn't show a negative correlation, so that's not really a good enough correlation scope as far as I'm concerned.
EX meter. This has a nice little,
BX meter is probably good.
yeah, has a nice
Okay,
little
there you go.
correlation.
Correlation. The second one down. Now hit.
Okay. This is it at mono. There we go.
Well, there is something dangerous here with the fact that it is showing a negative correlation overall. You know,
Yep.
negative correlation generally means that when you sum to mono, it's going to do something kind of fucked up.
Basically.
Yeah, generally. What happens when you do sum these to mono? Pan them in the center. Let's see what it sounds like. Doesn't sound bad.
Sounds a little weird. But I mean, it's not like, but it sounds weird in the context of mono, which makes everything sound kind of weird. You know what I mean? Especially if you're listening to like a mix. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds to me like the trick makes it sound significantly wider, and I think that was the goal of the whole conversation. You know, the correlation meter, regardless of what it says, I feel like in the context of an entire mix, if we muted this guy and we listened to it, just these rhythm guys in the mix, be interesting to see what that looks like.
Climbing to the top of the company ladder. Hope it doesn't take too long. Can't you see there'll come a day where it won't matter? Come a day when you'll be gone. Whoa.
And then when you throw up the actual meter on that, see what that looks like across the entire mix.
Climbing to the top of the company ladder. Hope it doesn't take too long. Can't you see the
So in the context of the mix, the correlation is fine.
Hey, actually, can you go back to that meter real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Hit the mono button so we can listen to the whole mix in mono.
Yeah.
climbing to the top of the company ladder. Hope it doesn't take too long. Can't you see there'll come a day where it won't matter? Come a day when you'll be gone. Whoa. I understand about it.
So yeah,
Is that crazy loud to anybody else, or is it just crazy loud to me?
it's probably crazy loud to.
Pretty loud. It's not like crazy.
Not crazy loud.
It's pretty crazy to me. But anyways, that's a mid solo button, not technically a mono, but
Oh, that was a mid. That was mid. Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, the fact that there is that much mid data and it's not side data actually means it's a pretty good correlation.
Yeah. Also about the audio, I tested the audio a little bit earlier with these
I
guys
heard
on the
it.
stream, and they.
I heard it. When you hit play, it just like blew up my car stereo.
Sorry about that.
Fucking.
Cool.
Anyways, I'd say let's just turn down the Pro Tools stream just a tiny bit, anyways, just in case.
Okay.
But anyways, all right. Well, so okay, yeah. A couple other people say it's pretty loud too. All right, but anyways, in the context of the mix, you still get a mono signal that's decent and all that, and you know maybe not perfectly correlated, but I'll bet you a crap load of money it's better correlated than putting a 15 millisecond delay on one side and panning it left and right.
Yeah. Basically.
Yep.
Cool.
But anyways, all right. So yeah, the idea that you can just take a track and pan it left and right and put a delay on one technically creates stereo, but it is not a stereo you generally want to use for most mixes.
Which is yeah.
Anyways, so
Mix busted.
any other ideas for how to use stereo? I mean, there are plugins designed just for doing this.
I could, I mean,
BX
there's
has got a stereoizer plugin that's actually pretty on point.
Yeah, I mean the thing that you do with your vocal tracks that you always talk about is that was what we went over last week, or yeah, was it last week, where we take the microshifter plugin and just play the actual vocal track, and then blend in the widener, and then the widener actually makes it just a touch wider. It's not mono anymore per se, but it is just a touch wider. And I feel like that's also a really great trick for vocals, because when you listen to a vocal, it's typically just right up the center. But with this trick, where you have something slightly detuned, kind of in the same thing of what we were doing before with the guitar, and then you blend it in with the original vocal, it's kind of putting in some sides. You know what I mean? And I think that's also a really great trick as well. I absolutely love it. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. So, what you want to move on to the next guy?
Yeah. I mean, unless you have any other ideas for creating stereo.
I do not, actually. That was pretty awesome the way you showed that off. I love it. What about you, Kenny? Nothing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Okay, cool.
The only other thing I would have said is, do you give it a shot with some plugins like the BX Stereoizer and a couple others that exist out there. They are pretty cool and they can do some good stuff. and they use a mix of various different techniques that do not just include delay to
Yeah.
stereo.
Question though, with like those plugins, the ones that actually do the stereo imaging or the stereo widening, if you stick one of those plugins on a mono track, it doesn't actually do anything when you actually turn up the, like, say you take BX stereo, right, and you put it on a vocal itself, you put it on the actual lead vocal. I've noticed that on a mono track, the BX stereo doesn't actually do anything. So it's kind of like,
You're not talking about the same plugin at all.
okay,
You're
so we're
talking
talking about
about-
two different plugins.
You're
Okay,
talking
cool.
about BX Solo or BX Control, which is an MS plugin.
I see.
They have a plugin called Stereoizer that
Interesting.
is only for you don't have it installed.
Nope, I don't.
Yeah, that plugin is only for taking mono stuff and jumping it into stereo.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Okay, cool. Well, that's awesome. I've never actually used any of those, the stereoizers, just because I've never really understood the context or anything like that. Or I've always had like double track rhythm guitars. So
I mean, even like Waves Doubler, all it does is it duplicates and puts pitch shifts and delays on the left and right.
So
It's
there are workarounds, just nothing's as good as having 2 tracks.
right. Nothing as good as having 2 tracks. All right.
Very cool.
Anyways, let's move on to the next one.
okay. The next one is mastering will fix problems in your mix.
Oh, look at these
Cool.
slides. Very nice.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like this is some sort of professional thing.
Holy shit. We're professional?
It's almost like we planned this.
Yeah,
It's almost like we planned this.
it's almost like maybe we've done this before, but we definitely have never done this before. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, so common misconception: mastering will fix problems in your mix. How many times have you been mixing something, or you've heard someone who's been mixing something, and the phrase is thrown around? Oh, well, the mastering guy will take care of that. Or, yeah, the low end's a little crazy, but I think that'll be taken care of in mastering. Or, yeah, the track's kind of quiet, maybe too quiet. They'll make it louder in mastering. No biggie. It'll sound much better in mastering. It won't sound as quiet and without energy. So, how many times have you guys heard that said?
the shit load. Every single one of those engineers I've ever heard say that got fired from where I worked. I was like, "You're done. So are you."
Shit.
So
Wait, did you do the firing?
maybe.
Brian loves firing people.
I hate firing people.
Liar.
Not having a good reason to. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Man,
Like,
I just
like-
realized
I like-
I would never want to ever feel the wrath of Ryan firing me, because you would be so positive about it.
Oh.
You're really great at what you do, but like you're just there are some things going on with clients that just don't seem to jive too well. I wish you the best of luck in all the other things you do in your life. Don't call me for a recommendation.
Damn.
Don't call us. We won't call you either.
That's pretty funny.
Don't call the Ghostbusters. Maybe they can fix your life because you shit.
Yeah,
I lost the joke. I was done.
it's gone. Bye
That
bye.
reminds me, I got to tell you something funny later. Totally not mix related. What?
Like half the shit we say on here is mix related.
Yeah, that's true. All right.
Anyway, so
You know what? This this class, it's good, but it could be better. We'll fix it in mastering. They'll fix it in mastering.
yeah, Dan, you're gonna master this class, right? Thanks.
Yeah. After I have you guys re-record all of your dialogue to you talking, and then we can
That's
have
called, that's called the Mix Wednesday Master Class.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right.
We can do that. We can do that.
All right. So I've heard a bazillion times people playing mixes because a lot of people send me mixes to listen to and ask me my thoughts and stuff, which I'm totally happy to do. Except I usually appreciate it when they send it to me and ask me specific questions rather than what do you think of this? Because what do you think of this it's kind of a rough question, because either I can listen to it from a listener perspective and go, well, it sounds like a mix and it sounds like a song, and I don't really like the song or whatever it may be. Maybe I love the song. But if it's from the perspective of what would you have done with this mix, well, then I have a bazillion answers to it,
I see.
If it is as simple as, I've got this mix and I'm just not stoked on how the snare drum sounds in it, like it seems like it just doesn't fit in context. What do you think? That's a way easier thing for me to answer, right?
I see.
Okay, so people send me mixes all the time, and I'll go, "Whoa, your low end's like crazy, like it's out of control or whatever." And they're like, "Oh yeah, mastering will clean that up." I go, no. It's as simple as that. It's simple, but like the number of times I've heard that as like a response back to what is considered an issue in the mix.
Yeah.
Is probably like 2/3 of the mixes that people send to me to kind of just listen to and review.
Yeah.
Anyways, so common ones that I hear, low end being just kind of messy. They say, mastering will tighten up the low end. Snare drums being too loud, mastering might bring it down. Let's say, I don't know. I mean, what are some of the other ones, man? I've heard this a lot, but I can never really pinpoint it to one or two things for some reason.
For me, it's typically like I'll listen to something. I'll have someone like talk about balance, and be like, oh well, the center of the mix sounds like the center is too quiet. Oh, but they have, they can actually kind of do that in mastering. They can totally take care of that in mastering. No biggie. They can bring up the center and make it more controlled or whatever. I've heard that stuff before. The loudness thing has always been something too. People mixing really low and then, not really understanding how their low end or how their snare drum or how their kick drum or any like really harsh transient will hit that bus compression. Once it's passed off to the master, and then not really compensating for it either. You know what I mean? So that they'll feel like they'll have their stuff mixed at a certain level, and whether the snare drum is too quiet or the snare drum's or the kick drum's really low, they'll say, oh well, the mastering guy can probably bring up the center a little bit. Like it doesn't. It's almost like a cop out for saying I haven't finished my mix. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just not how it works, but it is worth mentioning that a lot of that stuff can change slightly when a record's mastered.
Right, but fix is not the right way to say this. So
that's right.
Let's pick the most legitimate one. Okay, the most legitimate one is mastering will make my mix loud. Right.
Yep.
That's actually partially a little bit true.
Yep.
Right. We've done whole classes on mixing for mastering.
Yep.
Right, wherein we basically proved that if your mix is quiet, and we're not just talking, you left 3 dB of headroom for your mastering engineer, which by the way is an irrelevant number. You can basically pick anything, but we won't get into the actual math of bits and that makes sense. But if you've left headroom for your mastering engineer, let's say it's 3 dB, right?
Yep.
Technically, at that point, you can only rely on your mastering engineer to give you 3 more decibels.
True.
Technically. Everything beyond that is something that's going to affect the mix overall, right?
Yep.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. If your mastering engineer is good, they can obviously bring it up a significant amount more than that and all that. But if you want a mix that's going to come out at minus 6 dB RMS, and you're all going to go, that's fucking crazy. Yeah, it's fucking crazy, but that's what all the major pop records come out at right now. Taylor Swift's last record was there. Now, not that I'm saying you should be aiming for that.
Right.
But that is a goal that is achievable and on the radio and currently available in major records. Now, I'm not saying you should do it again.
How loud is it?
Minus 6 dB RMS is Taylor Swift's last record for 80% of the record.
Yeah.
That's insane. It's really, really loud. But anyways, if you're going for, let's just pick minus 9 instead, because that's like way more reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going for minus 9 and you provide a mix to a guy that has RMS of minus 20 and peaks at minus 3, at this point, once he gets his peaks to 0, and technically you should never hit 0 anyways, but whatever. Now, instead of minus 20, you got minus 17 as an RMS for your mix.
Okay.
Now, your mastering engineer has to squeeze 8 more dB out of your mix while squishing shit down in your mix in order to do it.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you've built your mix so that generally things are more controlled in the mix and kind of processed in such a way that by the time it gets to the master, the general RMS is higher. You're in a better spot. For example, I usually provide stuff to mastering guys at, I don't know, between -16 and -14 RMS.
Right.
With a couple dB of headroom. At which point, when they push it up, I'm already at -10. At which point, I really only need them to give me 1.5, 2 dB, at most 3 dB of loudness. Not that I'm ever going for -6, but I could if I wanted to.
Right. Interesting.
So if you want to kind of break down the math of mastering and RMS and all that and loudness, you can't even say loudness comes from mastering. Loudness comes from a mix that is built to be loud, that your mastering guy now is able to treat properly.
Right.
Sense?
That makes sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, I think. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I feel like the way I master, I haven't like submitted a lot of stuff lately. But what I'm going to start doing, what I've thought about doing for a while, is simply submitting the premix or the pre-master, and then submitting the actual master to the mastering engineer that doesn't have like just the stuff that makes my track a little bit louder on the master bus.
So,
you know what I mean?
your pseudo master, you also provide to the mastering engineer.
Exactly. So, like, for instance, this track, I have like this crazy metal track that I'm working on, and I've got a limiter on it. I've got a 2500, which is giving it some pump, and I've got a limiter on it, which is giving it +7, +7.5 decibels, right? Then I have this. I was fucking around with this soft tube thing. This is just, I was just screwing around with this, so that's not really relevant. Anyways, this is getting me like 7. What's that?
Nothing. Just laughing.
What's the matter?
Nothing. I was just laughing. I was just fucking around with it. Don't look at it.
Yeah, don't look at it. I was like, I opened it and I was like, don't look at this. But in this master chain, I've essentially got this limiter on here that's super clean. It's got this dynamic setting on it right now, so it's a little bit more, got some metal in it, but it's giving it volume so that when the listener listens to it in comparison to the rest of their music that they have on their iPod or their playlist in Spotify or wherever the fuck they're listening to, it actually stands up next to that mix, and that whole volume thing. It's not distracting, so they don't get that weird, like, oh, it's kind of quiet, that first like gut reaction. I wish this was louder. You know what I mean? Right. So if I were to submit this to someone, I would probably just bypass those two plugins, the ones that are giving me gain, and then just leave my master on there, which I'm pretty sure with this mix is getting me at I forget what it's actually doing. Let me see here.
Hey, that's my preset.
And then when I throw this on, yeah, so it's at like -9 once I throw the actual bus on. So right. It's like, so just getting it to that level where people can listen to it and not be distracted by the volume. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
And just to kind of jump on this topic as a whole in general. There's a lot of mixing guys who say, I don't need to learn anything about mastering because I'm going to send it to mastering every time and blah, 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 blah. Let me regale you with a tale.
Regale you with a tale. That's interesting.
Where myself and Serban Ganea both got to mix a song for one day. And the band decided which one they wanted to use, either mine or his.
Yeah.
We'll put it this way. When his mix came back to the band, it had an RMS of -7.
Okay. Wow.
That is fully mastered. He provided to the band a fully mastered mix that he mastered himself. This is not him sending it to the mastering guy. And this is because he's a smart dude. Because he knows that if he provides this to the band in the most competitive format possible, they can play it up against all their other favorite pop crap. And they can compare it. If you send a band something that's unmastered, quote unquote, I'm putting this in little air quotes because obviously we're talking about like a pseudo master here. We're not talking about a real one.
Yeah.
If you send them something that is unmastered, then they need to imagine how it sounds next to this other track that they are going to play it next to on their iPod.
Right.
And imagination is a funny thing because if I send it to this band and it sounds pretty much exactly like this other track that they love, and you send it to them and they need to imagine, I'm going to get the gig and you're not.
It's kind of crazy.
even if my mix isn't as good as yours, because it requires no imagination. Do you
Crazy.
know about that? Like, you get that?
I think I get that. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of it's like just like it's like psychology in a way.
Totally is, man. I mean, but that's the truth of it, man.
Yeah.
I feel like every mix engineer should learn the absolute basics of mastering. I don't just mean put a limiter on your thing and turn it up. Learn how the mastering guys actually do this so that you can implement some of those things in what you do when you send your mix to the band. When you send your mix to the band and it sounds like something that they can just throw on shuffle next to all their favorite shit, they will be happy with it.
Yeah.
You
'Cause
know?
at that point, it doesn't really matter like what you did to it. You made it sound the way they want to hear it. So the way it was done is somewhat irrelevant unless there's fundamental issues with it.
Right. And then in the end, they're going to ask you, okay, we finished this, should we send this to mastering? And you go, yep, this is the guy we're going to use, and he's going to kill it.
That's awesome.
And when you do that, you're going to send that guy your pseudo master, and you're going to send him the mix. That's not mastered. And I've always done that. I've always sent both. And my guy listens to my pseudo master and goes, okay, cool. I understand like the overall balance you wanted to do here.
Yeah.
And then, sends it back with something that usually to me, I'm just like, damn. You know what I mean?
That's why he's your guy.
It's like, it's little things, man, but it's little bits of sparkle here and there. Stuff that I just, didn't do in the same kind of way,
Yeah.
But anyways, so, mastering won't fix problems in your mix, but you as a mix engineer should learn how to master, not because you're going to do it, but because it's good for you to know how to, and it could potentially get you more clients by being able to rough master something when you send them mixes.
Totally.
And back to that tale. I did get the mix. I got it, and he didn't, which is insane because that dude is like an A-list #1 motherfucker, and yeah, his mix was fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're an A-list motherfucker.
I work for a lot of A-list people, but usually not on their records, just on their live shows.
So moving on, this one's actually pretty relevant to what we were just talking about as far as mastering is concerned. I've heard more times than not, especially in school, which is the most interesting part about this one, that you shouldn't master. You shouldn't use references that are masters. And I remember when I was in like my mix classes, and like trying to think of a reference that I could find that wasn't mastered.
Yeah,
and I remember just being so like perplexed by the idea that I couldn't use something. Like I was like, okay, my teacher's telling me not to do this, so I must not do this. But how the fuck am I supposed to find a reference that, how am I supposed to find a reference then? You know what I mean? And it's like, he just like gave, so it's like, to me, learning this was kind of hard because I didn't really understand. Like, that was the secret right there all along. Use references that are mastered mixes. That's the secret. And for a long time, I just never understood that because I was always told the opposite. So you guys can hear it with this track that I've done, this metal track that I just played. Like, my reference is, a crazy death metal track. It sounds like this. Right? My mix sounds like this. I mixed to that reference in loudness, and
they're not the same band.
They're not the same band.
I'm sure.
They're the same.
They're
the same
band.
song. You just played the same song twice, dude.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same song.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did.
but
No,
for
I
me,
didn't.
no, I didn't. Yeah, Kenny would know if Decapitated played in the studio.
That sounded like decapitated to me, Ryan.
Yeah, you mean he played the same song twice? Got it.
Got it. Yeah.
It sounded the same. All right.
Yeah. But essentially, the whole idea for me was that, and this is the reason why I have such an opinion on this, because this was kind of a revelation that was unfortunately something that I came upon like really way later, probably within the past couple of years, and then started to actually like having the tools to get there, not only within the past year, you know what I mean? And this class has actually helped that a lot. So having that revelation and understanding that is I think one of the most important things about mixing is that you can get to your mix with a master that is mastered, mostly because, like in our previous conversation, yes, the master shouldn't fix anything in your mix. If it's fixing stuff, that means it's a bad mix. Or not bad mix, just...
Here's my ideas on a reference, right? We pick reference mixes because they sound fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Not because they're loud, right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
if you want to achieve those sounds, use a mastered reference and just get it to sound like those tones.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe your mix is going to be, 460 dB quieter, right? So then just turn down the output on your reference, and you're trying to achieve those tones. Ultimately, when you're going to achieve tones like that, you probably do have tons of control. Things like, dynamic control. So your drums are compressed and kind of put together. Your low end is really tight and really together. Your mid-range, really controlled. All of that means that ultimately you're going to be able to achieve that volume because you achieved all that control and all the sub-portions of your mix.
Yeah.
There's no point in saying, I shouldn't use this because it's loud and mastered. Because it being loud and mastered sounds the way you want your record to sound. So who fucking cares if it's mastered? It's achieved sounds that you want to achieve. And achieve those quieter, totally good, awesome, cool. And then let your mastering guy or you, whatever it may be, get it up to volume. But at least if you've achieved those sounds, that means you've achieved your reference.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I don't think there's much more to say to it than that, honestly.
Nope, there isn't. Moving on.
Right. Fuck you guys.
Fuck you guys. Nah, don't fuck you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. I like you guys. Anyways,
How
the
much?
quality of your gear is indicative of the quality of your mix. Strangely, the same idea as what we were just talking about, because I just played for you a track that sounds somewhat similar to the reference, and there's not a single piece of analog gear in that entire mix. So if you consider that mix to be good, which I think it's somewhat all right. What's that?
That's arguable.
Shit.
That's arguable.
It's shit.
It's shit. But for me, at least, I feel like right now in my mixing career, I haven't used any real external gear. I haven't tapped into that yet because I don't have the cash for it. But I'm pretty happy with where I am as far as like getting stuff to sound a certain way using nothing but plugins.
Hey,
So
who said anything about cash?
what?
Is that a theft implication?
No, it's a going into debt implication.
Well, cash is better than credit cards. Are you saying you use credit for everything?
Nah, I did at one point.
Maybe.
Yeah. So for me, I don't think this is true at all. I think you can get in the box mixes to sound pretty awesome. How do you guys feel about this?
Kenny, thoughts?
There's a reason why people might think this, and there may be something behind that, but generally, no, you can't say that the quality of your gear, is indicative of the quality of your mix.
He said dick.
Actually, you know what? Let's put it this way. If we were to put Kenny, you, into an SSL studio with a shitload of outboard gear, would you make a better mix there than you would in your home?
Definitely not necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, that itself right there just covers it. That's it, period.
Yeah.
It'd be sort of hard to test that, but I know that.
Do it. I'll square you away, dude. I'll get you some studio time. Come on.
All right, let's do it.
All right, gotcha.
Nelson makes a good point, though. He said even cheap mics. That's where I might draw the line.
Hold on.
We're talking about mixing, not tracking.
Cool. Take that.
But yes, obviously the tracking makes a world of a difference in your mix. But I think gear can certainly, I don't know. For me, gear has kind of improved as I improved. Gear was almost more of the way I thought of it was kind of a motivator, and kind of I guess a trophy to myself to moving to the next level. I don't think they've made me a better mixer. I just think that they've made me more of the mixer that I've become, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So no, it's not about the quality of gear, although gear is a lot of fun.
So here's the interesting thing, right? There is an entire marketing machine behind selling you plugins and selling you gear. Millions and millions of dollars gets put into exactly this. Of course, you're going to believe that buying this plugin makes your mix better, because that's exactly what they tell you, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about actually getting gear. Some of the best stuff I've ever done had no hardware in its mixes. And then I've done plenty of stuff that has hardware. Now, I own hardware, so does Kenny. So this is a relevant piece too, is that I didn't buy it necessarily because it makes my mix better.
Yeah.
But it allows me to achieve a sound I'm trying to go for quicker.
Right.
It's more about knowing the tools you have than it is about having expensive tools. And this is another thing, even about cheap mics. The cost of a mic is not in any way indicative of the quality of a mic. There are plenty of mics that are a couple $100 that are actually better for certain sources than mics that are many thousands of dollars. So it goes in all ways, man. I mean, it's about knowing the gear you have more than it is about having expensive or cheap gear. Yeah. That's it.
Yep.
Nobody's gonna say anything.
Sorry.
Fuck
Kenny's
yeah.
microphone was echoing, so I muted it. I wanted to unmute it now. Kenny. Where's Kenny?
No, that's
There
fine.
he is.
Just silence me.
Sorry. It was so distracting. I was like, holy shit.
At least
No.
he didn't murder you.
That's true. Yeah. Cool.
Hashtag Kenny's commentary matters.
No, but there's tons and tons and tons of stuff out there these days, and there's tons and tons and tons of stuff that's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper these days. I mean, Waves plugins are like $20 every other weekend now. When I bought the API bundle only was $650 when I bought it, and I bought it because it was awesome. Now you can buy it for like $50 a plugin.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's great stuff out there, but it's more about knowing how to use what you have, like your tools, than it is having more tools.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, do you agree, like, at a certain point in time when digital plugins were had a certain level of quality, that gear was better? Like, I don't know. I didn't live as a mix engineer through that era, so I don't really know.
There definitely was a point in time where analog gear was better than plugins, for sure.
Yeah.
But we're no longer in that place. And the thing is, it never even was that it was better. It was that it was different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what it was that as engineers, we had learned that this piece of gear gives you this kind of sound. The same way now I know that if I want mid-range saturation and I want like kind of harmonic overdrive in mid-range, I'm going to grab an API 550B plugin and just take the mids and just blast it. It's the same way that I know that is what I want out of it.
Yeah.
We then knew that this piece of hardware gives me this. And we hadn't either had the time or kind of the variance of tools and plugins to go, this plugin gives me this. Instead we were like, well, that's the sound I want, so I'm just going to keep going with the hardware.
Gotcha.
And now we've got enough emulations of all these different things that ultimately you can get any sound you want out of a bazillion different ways now.
Yeah.
Andres made a pretty good point, though. What about monitoring? Does monitoring count?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the last Eminem record was mixed in headphones. It was mastered on speakers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it can be done. And
Everything Skrillex ever was done on headphones and is mastered on headphones too.
Yeah.
And That's a couple times platinum.
Yeah, it's true.
The options are there. Yes, better monitoring might give you a better representation of things, but it's not going to make your mix better.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I guess so.
You can't. There's no way for you to argue that better monitoring makes your mix better.
It's true.
It definitely makes it easier for you to understand what's going on. But again, it's about learning what your gear that you have does.
And I think part of I mean, this kind of gets into one of our future kind of mix, one of our mix myths here. But I think the home studio, like, as long as you know your room and you know your, if you know your room and you know your, the way your room responds to audio, or you know your headphones, or you just have a really good understanding of how your mix is moving on its own, you can do a lot with that, and you can get pretty close, or you can get to the final. You can get to the final mix, or make your client happy, and or get to a place where your mix is crushing. I think you can totally do that in a home studio. I can do it with my headphones. I know dudes who mix stuff like the Periphery records that sound ridiculous are all mixed on a laptop with a guy in headphones. You know what I mean? Like, Nolly might be actually mixing them now, so he's probably got a bigger setup. But I think before, like, it was done by a dude on a laptop with headphones. You know what I mean? It's all about your skills.
Yep. Kenny just made a gross joke. I laughed at
What's that?
Kenny made a gross joke.
I didn't joke at all. I just said
You didn't joke? That was a joke. All right, good. All right, what else we got? What's next, man?
The polarity button will put your tracks in phase.
No.
No.
Let's
jump.
That's it.
Let's just jump into it. Just
Okay.
jump into it real quick.
Well, we can dissect it like in English class when you dissect a sentence.
Okay, Kenny, go for it. This one's you.
Okay. So the subject is we'll disregard
The subject.
is polarity.
There's two nouns in that.
Yes. Polarity.
Nope.
Well, there's button.
Tracks.
Button and track.
Those are the two nouns, dude.
Okay. The adjective polarity and the adjective phase. Are those adjectives?
Is the noun too.
You know,
Right?
just shut up.
Whatever. Let's not break it down.
Do you want me to break it down?
All right.
No, let's not do that.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, if you've been with us for a little while, you've probably heard us say many times that polarity and phase are two very different things.
Yes.
That's the short answer. So
Yep.
the polarity button will not make your tracks in phase. It'll flip the polarity.
Yeah,
Exactly.
With the polarity. So to specify the difference between polarity and phase, polarity is the push versus pull, or the positive versus negative of the energy in the waveform, right? So in what we're looking at here on Pro Tools, if you look at the top waveform, it goes down before it goes up, right? If you look at the bottom waveform, it goes up before it goes down. So if you want to get kind of weird about it, you could say that the top waveform has a negative initial polarity, right? Because it gives you a negative value, then gives you a positive value. You could say the bottom waveform may have a positive initial polarity, right? Now, it's not really a very technical term. That's not really how you properly say these things, but we could say that, right? Okay, so a polarity button inverts that. So it turns the negative into the positive and the negative. That is what it does. In fact, in the physical switch, what it does is it flips the wires, the positive and the negative. Okay?
Just like that.
Phase relationships are time-based. And phase is a measurement of time based on a singular frequency. That's actually what phase is. It's just a measurement of where in a singular waveform you are, right?
Exactly.
So in the case that we're looking at this, right, we've got, I'm assuming this is a snare top and bottom maybe?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's do it with something a little bit more complicated than snare top and bottom. Can we take the overhead and place it next to the snare?
Yeah.
Because snare top and bottom is pretty close in relationship. I'd rather make it a little bit more complicated. So if you were to look at this snare top and bottom, though, you guys would surely go, oh, well, they're out of phase, right? Which they actually are. But they're also out of polarity because the top mic has a negative initial polarity. The bottom mic has a positive initial polarity, right? So if you have polarity on one, you get closer. So let's take, well, actually, Dan, before you zoom in a ton on that, let's keep the snare bottom and top next to each other real quick.
Sure.
Again, I can't see your Pro Tools screen, so I'm.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how you keep making it go away, but you did.
That's really funny that you were following along the whole time and I was keeping up. That's hilarious.
Well,
I was basically following along with you the
watching
entire
it
time.
So I'm watching it late, so like everything I say, I could see you do after.
Dude, that's hilarious. Okay. That was like choreographed or some shit.
Yeah, so let's take that snare bottom and just put it right next to the snare top just for a minute, just so we can just see what we got going on here.
Sure.
Okay. So here, if we were to flip the polarity on, let's say, the snare top, let's do it by using not an EQ. Let's do it by actually doing it on the track with a render of an audio suite, just because then we can actually see it do it, if that's cool.
Oh, I was just going to do it with the EQ and just
like
this.
Render it audio suite. Yeah, cool. So now he's flipped the polarity, right? They are definitely closer to in phase, right? You can see that they both go down before they go up. But if you look at where the zero crossing of that first waveform is, which is where Dan's got his cursor, and you look at the zero crossing of the next one, you'll see that there's a time delay there.
14 milliseconds. 14 samples, sorry.
14 milliseconds here. So,
14 samples.
Sorry, samples. Yeah, 14 milliseconds would be really wacky.
Yep.
At this point, you can see that they are definitely closer to in phase, but they are not actually in phase. And there's no argument that tracking correctly can eliminate this because it's physically impossible. So the physics of how microphones work, it's not possible to do this unless you placed every microphone exactly the same distance from every source that it is pointed at. Which you realistically can't do. So let's talk about this. Okay, we're closer to in phase, but technically we're still receiving comb filtering, and that's because of this time delay here of basically the zero crossing. So you see that the top waveform is 14 samples earlier than the bottom waveform. So if you were to take the bottom waveform and nudge it to the left by 14 samples, I don't know if you just did that, maybe. Yeah, you'll see that now they are way closer to in phase. Almost makes sense. Now, that being said, they'll never be perfectly in phase because we are talking about multiple microphones on a singular source, and it's not even really a singular source because there's a second head on the bottom half of the snare drum. Okay, now let's move past snare top and bottom because, as I said, this is the easy example. Let's go to the complicated example, and this is an argument that plenty of people seem to argue, which is physically impossible. Okay, now we've got a snare top and we've got the drum overheads. You can see that they're in polarity because on that snare hit, they both go down before they go up, right?
Yep.
So at this point, if you flip the phase using a polarity button, you don't actually make it any more in phase. But actually, if you think about it really technically, actually, if you want to render that, you'll see that it's actually closer to in polarity because now when it goes back up on the overhead, it is going up on the snare drum.
But it's still...
I mean, it's still way off. But if you look at what's actually happening, look at the jump, like the upper half of the waveform on the overhead.
I see. Yeah.
The upper half of the waveform on the overhead is probably now more additive with the snare top mic.
It's true. It is more in polarity.
I'll bet you that actually sounds better now, even though technically the polarity relationship and the phase relationship is super fucked now.
Yep.
So that probably sounds better, right?
Yep.
Now, let's undo that polarity flip you just did. Okay, cool. Now we're technically in polarity on both of these, and you can physically see it.
Yep.
Now, if you were to delay that snare top by the number of samples to line it up with the overhead,
which just happens to be 110 samples.
Cool. Now they're actually way closer to in phase.
It is one sample off.
Yeah.
So technically, I guess it could have been 111, but you know,
Again, that's
whatever.
a singular zero crossing. But you can see that for the most part, that's actually in phase.
Yep.
It's never going to be technically perfectly in phase because, again, we're talking about multiple microphones on a source. And unless they're hearing the exact same source in exactly the same way without, like, you know, room reflections and all that other shit, it's never going to be perfectly in phase. But this is way closer to in phase than flipping the polarity on that would have done.
Yep.
In fact, flipping the polarity on it would have technically made it out of polarity, but it bet you it would have sounded better.
Yep.
Because it would have been more additive.
Yep. Exactly. Couldn't
Anyway.
have explained it better myself, Ryan John.
So, I mean, this is an interesting one because people will argue that, well, you know, the smear of the overheads being out of time are actually part of the drum sound. And they're part of what you're used to hearing in recordings.
Yeah.
But they're not actually part of the drum sound because when you're standing in front of a drum kit, you don't hear smear. You hear the snare drum hitting your ears at one time, then you hear reflections off the room coming at you, right?
Exactly.
So if you're trying to emulate reflections off the room by using your overheads to do it, well, then more power to you. But that's ultimately what room mics are for, right? So
Right.
Either way, the moment you've put multiple microphones on a singular source, you are going to have phase incoherence. Your polarity button might make it better tonally, but polarity does not fix phase ever.
Right.
So
Cool. I like it.
I went a little deep on that, and I'm sorry. And everybody can argue with me and say that that's untrue or wrong, and then I will just throw physics in your face. It'll be fine.
Physics in Your Face by Ryan John.
All right. How about this
Here's
one?
another one you're going to have to get pretty deep on, Ryan. But I have heard this. Kenny, I don't know if you've heard this before. I have heard people who have built their entire company around the idea that a clock improves the quality of your sound. I never really understood it. I never really got it. And then I kind of realized that it doesn't even really matter if I got it or not because the whole idea is kind of false because, it just doesn't, there's no real reason why this is something that would affect your sound and improve the quality of your sound. I know plenty of people that actually feel this way. And, Kenny or Ryan, either of you guys can explain why this is perceived as being true? And two, why is it's false?
Kenny, do you want to jump in on this at all?
Somebody's muted.
Did you mute him or did he mute him?
I did not mute him.
Motherfucker.
All right. Well,
okay. Well, let me jump into this one a little bit. All right. Again, the marketing behind clocking is selling to you that a clock will make everything better. I think the better way to word this myth is an external clock will make your mixes better or make your mixes sound better. That's a better way to word this myth because there is some arguable portions of it improves the quality of your sound, but it definitely does not improve the quality of your mix in specific regard unless you're using a shitload of inserts and a shitload of digital gear.
yeah.
So let's talk about what a clock does. A clock basically keeps all your samples playing back at exactly a consistent time. When I say samples, I don't mean like, your drum samples and shit like that. I mean each piece of data that says an audio value or an amplitude value for an audio track.
Yep.
Right. So you guys know how digital audio works. It's spitting out amplitude values and then they kind of become a waveform, right? It's totally a myth that waveforms in digital are stepped. That's not actually true. That is how a DAW shows it to you.
Yeah.
But it's not actually how it is drawn or how the data is stored. It's not like it shows you a 1 until it makes a 2 and then until it makes a 3. It doesn't create steps like that. That's not the physics of how this works. What it does is sends a piece of data for 1, then there's no data, then there's a piece of data for 2, then there's no data, then there's a piece of data for 3. And your D to A converter converts this into an analog waveform. And your D to A converter does not create steps, period.
Right.
That's how they work. It doesn't
Right.
function. And there's plenty of awesome videos on the internet of dudes using O-scopes that are zoomed into, like nanosecond time that will prove that this is the case. Okay.
Jonathan, I don't get this at all.
So, again, word clocks, what they do is they make sure that the data going into or out of your system is going in at a consistent time.
Yeah.
It's just happening all at the right time. If you want to compare it to something else, compare it to like frame rates on a movie, or even the speed of your cassette player, or like actually the even easier one, because at this point everyone's got a record player, right?
Yep.
If your record's playing back consistently at the same speed, it sounds good, maybe, depending on whatever the record is. But if you put your finger and touch the record player and you slow it down, you hear the pitch shift, right?
Yep.
Or if you move it faster, you hear the pitch go up, right?
Yep.
Functionally, if you've got a clock that's giving you inaccurate clocking, that's kind of what you're doing. You're slowing down and speeding up the way it's playing back.
I see. Okay.
There's a little bit more to it than that. But the physics of 90% of audio gear that has a word clock input, or digital gear that has word clock input and has a clock inside it, right? Let's talk about, let's say it's your audio interface. I've
Okay.
got an audio interface. Inside it, there's a clock. It
Yep.
also has a word clock input.
Okay.
Inside that piece of gear are functionally two clocks. There's
Okay.
one that runs its own clock just to kind of make shit happen, make shit work. Then there's another one that takes incoming clock and kind of spins its wheels per se to the same speed as the other one and spits this data over to its internal clock.
Yeah.
If I take a $10,000 clock, yes, one of these exists, and I plug it into a $200 audio interface,
Okay.
the incoming freewheel clock is still the incoming freewheel clock from a $200 interface. It never will be able to respond to 10M quality in the same way a 10M clock responds to that quality.
Okay.
It would be like putting a BMW engine into a 1993 Civic.
Okay.
You're still going to be fucked.
Yep.
And it doesn't really work in the same way. Ultimately, what external clocks can do really well is sync up multiple pieces of digital gear.
Gotcha.
That's actually what they're for. Hence, most external clocks have like 8 outputs on it. Well, the nice ones do. The cheap
Yeah.
ones have like 2 or 4. Let's jump past that. An external or a better clock in a piece of gear might make your playback more consistent, right?
Okay.
But a better clock in your gear is not going to change anything about your bounce of your mix. If your bounce of your mix never goes to analog and back to digital, or back to analog or back to digital.
Right.
Fucking
I feel like that's where the actual misconception kind of came into play when people were using like ADATs, multiple ADATs, and they had these like digital / analog things that were needed to be synced. And the whole idea came from having one clock source to a bunch of external clocks, making sure they're all in sync so that everything in sync. It's almost like, sorry, it's almost like that idea, without thinking about the actual physics or implications of digital audio, just kind of was carried forward because of just it being a regular idea. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's widely accepted that this is the thing, you know?
Right. Well, back then, I mean, yes, you had, 6 ADATs all slaved together so you could get
Because it was something that actually affected the sound of your mix.
totally affected it. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a different thing. Also, at the time then, you were using ADATs to play back and playing back through analog gear, right? So your A conversion there.
In a way, it's almost the same idea as people who think, like we were getting back to earlier, about how analog gear sounds better than digital gear, or sorry, analog compressor or gear or EQ, whatever, sounds better just because it's simply hardware. Just because at some point in time it did sound better doesn't mean that that's the way it is today. It's just the idea of it has carried forward. It's
Right.
a pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting concept, and kind of shows you the power of people saying things without understanding the implications or the actual physics behind anything. So I know I just realized that now it's the same exact idea. So
Right. Well, the interesting thing is that there are plenty of analog compressors that sound way shittier than cheap
true.
It's
Yeah,
even
that's true.
compressors that sound fucking great.
Yeah.
It's some win, some lose. Anyway,
Yeah.
So external clocking is really designed for clocking multiple pieces of gear together to each other. An external clock will never in any way affect an entirely in-the-box mix, period. Physically impossible for it to.
Yep.
So,
we can call that one mix busted.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, as I was saying, it's like it would be better worded if it was more an external clock improves the quality of your mix.
Yep.
But yes. All right. Next song.
So you can see, do you see my screen now? Yeah, you can see my screen.
Nelson. He said clock blocked.
I love it.
Man, so actually, before we kind of move past that, I do want to jump in a kind of funny story. So
Sure.
There's a studio just north of here that I'm not going to name names because I just don't want to be the jerk that does that.
The
But it's a
namer.
very, very famous facility. They've done tons and tons of records that have gone platinum and just are absolutely insane. They have, I do believe, 9 mix rooms, and they went out and bought $10,000 clock for each of those mix rooms.
Woo.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And it's because ultimately they wanted to sync all the rooms together so that they can run audio from one room into the next and back and forth, and they wanted to do it via digital. So it actually makes sense that they'd have unique clock that kind of spits out across all the rooms. And what you want, if you want to do that properly, is you get a really nice clock, you get another clock of the same quality, spit stuff from that first clock into it, et cetera, and kind of just spread it out that way. Anyways, all the engineers in-house were like, oh my gosh, everything sounds so much better. This is amazing. Everything's awesome. This is great. Best investment. And then they found out 3 months later that none of them were plugged in correctly and nothing was ever clocking off of it. So 6 months later,
Damn.
they sold all of them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Love it.
Such is the thing. You make a piece of gear that looks awesome, even if it does absolutely nothing. People go, oh, it sounds better.
Yep.
Anyways, all right, next one.
Yep. So this comic came up a while back in one of the many groups that I follow, and I found it again. I think it's hilarious. Batman slapping Robin. So this one I think is what's that?
I feel like that's pretty common, right? Batman slapping Robin.
Yeah, it's pretty common. Yeah. So this one I feel like this is also a pretty common misconception that for a lot of beginners, I think less beginners, I think this is something that comes with experience and, is then said most of the time out of a lack of experience. Because I think the reason why I always thought this way and why a lot of people who've gone to any type of audio recording school can think this way is because you go into school, right? And you go into this giant studio, which you think is supposed to be perfect. Maybe the studio is amazing. You don't really know what good or bad is in the studio because you've never really done this shit before. And then you don't really know what any of this stuff is. You just know that if you put a microphone that's somewhat expensive and then in front of something that sounds like whatever you're trying to record, and then you record that through all this amazing gear, well, how the hell could it ever sound bad? And or how the hell... What's that?
Nothing. I said probably because you suck, because I was being mean.
Exactly. So the whole idea is that for a lot of people that I knew and a lot of guys that, probably just tracking in rooms that don't sound good or just tracking without moving mics or anything, the whole idea was that, I can just fix this with EQ later. That's typically the answer. The whole you can fix it in the mix later, I think, really comes back to someone thinking that an equalizer can shape the sound of the mix, but we've come to learn throughout years of mixing that an EQ is really there to correct stuff and maybe allow stuff to blend into a mix a little bit better. It's not there to fundamentally change the sound of the actual source track. So for me personally, I feel like it's kind of like trying to get guitar tones. A guitar tone is 80% there when you record it, and it's 80% there when it's given to you in a mix. So, trying to think that you're going to change the guitar tone with a little bit of EQ, it's kind of an unfortunate misconception about the real world as far as pro audio is concerned. Kenny and Ryan and I recorded something, or Kenny more specifically, and Ryan and I was there to help, and it was just a big fun thing that we did last year in February. We recorded a few tracks actually, for this band. What's that?
A whole record.
Yeah.
Whole record. And you know, Ryan recently posted this in the chat. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I think it's under here. Yeah. Essentially, it's the tracking. It's just the raw. Well, explain to us what it is, Ryan, that we're gonna listen to. I've got it queued up right here.
Oh, okay.
I can hit play whenever you want.
What we've got there is raw tracking. It is just the tracks and pans, levels. There is a maxim on the master just to get up to some reasonable level. There's no EQs anywhere. There's no compressors anywhere except for the maxim that's on the master. There are time adjusters to do some phase alignment, but those time adjusters we actually put on while we were tracking, so the drummer could actually hear closer to a final drum sound in terms of phase coherence.
Yep.
But yeah, so if we're talking about fix it in the mix, this is an achievable sound right here with zero mixing when you don't have the mentality of let's fix it in the mix, because everything here was tracked with a pretty serious microscope. And honestly, in the mix, I literally have no EQ on the guitars that Kenny tracked. They're just blended with pans properly.
They sound fucking awesome.
Sorry, blended with fader levels properly. And there's I think a high pass and a low pass on the guitar bus. There's no additional EQ whatsoever because the guitars are so freaking spot on.
That's awesome.
So yeah, let's do this mix right here, which again is not a mix. It is literally levels and pans of raw tracking only.
I haven't heard this in months. It's giving me the chills.
Crazy, right?
Sounds fucking awesome though, right?
Yeah.
So listening to that, you can really understand that if you have the proper, ideas, experience, techniques, and overall vision for going into a recording session, especially if you're the one who's mixing the actual recording session eventually, you can really you can really just say, all right, this is what we're doing. And then you can immediately make it happen. Get the sounds you want, listen to the references in the studio, and just, make the options available to you that you'll need for your mix later. And it also helps if you have a Kenny Goshgarian recording your guitar tracks too.
Right. So ridiculously good, it's like not fair.
Yeah, basically. So I think fixing it in the mix is something that everybody needs to understand. That everybody needs to understand that it's not something that is really ideal. So take that.
Here's the thing: if you get like tracks sent to you that are less than ideal, you're going to do everything you can to make them good.
Yep.
But if you started with tracks that were better than that, what you have the ability to do is so much greater.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you end up in a place where you're like, well, you can't fix whatever the problem is that's given to you, and you're hacking your way through it. Ultimately, you're screwing the entire project by deciding you can fix it in the mix rather than addressing the issue right then.
Yeah. I actually, maybe in the next class, actually we have other plans for the next few classes, but eventually I want to go over the drums of this Boston track that I'm mixing. The drummer, I got these drums and I was like, this sounds pretty rough, but let's see what we can do. To the point where I was given one room microphone and no overheads. And I was just like, all right, let's go for it. And it actually turned out pretty well. It's pretty good. So there are ways to do stuff, but the idea is that you start with got to start with something great. You know what I mean? And I think this is a great example of that thing you played. So that reminded me of that track. I want to do that later. So.
If everybody got tracks as good as those came out, everybody would be a master mix engineer.
That's true.
Like the best mix engineer on the freaking planet.
Yeah, it's true. Here's a good one. Mixing low end. You need a subwoofer to mix low end. I honestly thought about getting a subwoofer, but you know what? I think it's more of a problem, more of a nuisance than anything else, personally for me, just because the way I mix now is a little different with using bandpass filters on my master. That's not really an answer to this question, though. Ryan, why is this a misconception, and why is it widely accepted as something that you should do?
So people always go, "Oh man, I want to mix my low end, I need a subwoofer. I need it to be bassy and whatever. I don't fucking know, but people do say this a lot, and I've definitely thought like, oh, maybe I should get a subwoofer so I can mix like all this crap. Subwoofers, unless you actually have a really, really well acoustically treated room, subwoofers tend to become a standing wave nightmare in your room.
Yeah.
And the problems you'll actually bring up in your room tend to be significantly greater than the benefit of having that subwoofer. There are, exceptions to this, of course, but the only time I would say it is more relevant to have a subwoofer is if you truly believe that most of the listeners of the product you're about to create will be listening with a sub.
Interesting.
So in the case of pop music, absolutely not. In fact, most of the listeners are going to listen to it on iPod earbuds or on their phone directly or on one of those little like Bluetooth speakers.
Yeah.
That is where 90% of your stuff's going to get heard. Metal bands. Most dudes who like metal can't afford a sub in their car.
Whoa.
Damn.
We
No,
have different priorities, all right?
different priorities, man. I got to get my hair like permed and shit.
Yeah, man.
From you.
No, but it's
Perm you.
totally dependent on who's listening, right? So if you're doing house music and your intention is for this to be played in a club only, then yeah, you probably want to get a subwoofer and you want to kind of get an idea of what's going on there.
Yeah.
But if you're making house music and you want people to play it on their laptops and you're actually not planning on turning this into something that is going to be, club based, then don't get a sub. Listen to it on the delivery method that your fans are going to listen to it on.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, there's obviously the expense of having a sub. There's also the expense of the requirement of being able to do separate sub outs, being able to turn things on and off and all that crap. Being able to make sure there's phase coherency between your mains and your subs. It's a whole bunch of crap that you need to be able to do in order to do this properly, right?
Yeah.
So the solution that I've always had, and I have actually had subs, but my first solution was buy Barefoots because they have subs built into them and they're phase coherent and all that. But
Right.
let's pretend that you can't buy $10,000 speakers. The other solution is to do things like bandpass in your mix, which I do believe Dan has up in front of us. Why don't you talk to me about how this works?
Sure. So the way I have started to do this, the way I started to do it was by just taking a filter and listening to my mix, hitting play, and moving this filter up in octaves. So, you start around like your sub frequencies, and maybe you start at like, let's say 90, right? And you listen to, what I do is I started just listening to my mix with this filter on. Not really understanding the implications of it, just understanding that I was listening to just low-end energy, right? Listening to that low-end energy and understanding how it sounds. So let's listen to this. It's just a metal track, so it's pretty intense, but it's just low-end, and you probably won't hear it if you're listening to it on laptop speakers. But you get a sense of the energy.
Okay.
Right? So I'm getting a sense on this side. What's that?
Sure.
What?
I didn't hear it. I'm listening on the laptop.
Exactly. But the goal here is listening to the energy and the control that you have in the low end. Obviously, what you can do, you select that filter, and you can move this up in octaves to listen to the whole mix, how it sounds in different, how it sounds without certain frequencies in there. So if I were to listen to this, I could just move it up to 180.
I hear that.
And here, I can actually hear kick, snare, and bass, and a little bit of the low end of the guitars. I'm not actually on a vocal part, so I didn't hear any vocals. Can't hear any vocals yet, because this stuff is really high.
Oh.
Let's move up another octave to around just under 400. Right there. Things are still all right. Things are all kind of under control. And you keep doing this and moving up and listening to it in certain frequency ranges. And you can do that with this filter on, with a low pass filter. You can do it with a high pass filter. Same exact idea. You can start at the bottom or the top and move down and up in the actual mix. Something that would be relevant here would be like, okay, when I have this filter set to 374, can I still hear the kick drum in there? Can I still hear the bass in there? And then you understand, like, okay, that means that this bass is going to come through speakers that have that don't have a frequency response within that range. The way it's modified over time for me is I've actually with a FabFilter plugin, because you can select 2 filters at once and have them kind of bandpass, you can move them at the same time. So you can actually listen to frequency spectrums. And then the second thing that evolved over time was listening to this mix, listening to my reference as well as my mix in these frequency ranges. So I'd move over to my reference and listen to that there in this frequency range. Just sounds like noise because it's crazy metal, but you can move it up. Or FabFilter has some like interesting like presets like phone, which is apparently the phone setting of what a phone sounds like. And then you switch between your mix and that and get an idea of what's going on. So you're limiting yourself by only listening to certain frequency ranges, and then kind of interpreting that, making decisions, and then kind of understanding how your mix is working. Because sometimes, especially with low end, which is the case here, your low end can get out of control. You've got some stuff going on in the bass, the kick, maybe it's not working correctly, or maybe the low end just doesn't actually sound like your reference, and you just can't tell because you're listening to all frequencies at the same time always. So by doing this, you can actually achieve that idea of listening to or feeling the sub, feeling it hit you in the chest, as some mix engineers would say. It's just a different way about going about it. So that's one workaround that we use, or that I use, and it's worked out pretty well for me.
So we got way outside of the scope of just a subwoofer here.
Yeah.
But
Good stuff, though.
let's drop in 2 additional pieces of information here. The standard subsettings for music and for like film are 80 hertz as a crossover frequency and 110 hertz as a crossover frequency, right?
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen on like one of those receivers that, you know, you can set to play music or whatever, or it's got like a movie mode, a cinema mode, a concert mode, all that shit. On those, the standard settings are 80 for music and 110 for movies, TV, all that crap. So if you can check your mix and set your crossover frequency, quote unquote crossover frequency, basically your low pass frequency knee at 80 and listen to your low end, and it sounds controlled and tight and sounds like what you want a subwoofer to be here.
Yeah.
Then you're in a good space. If you move it up to 110, now you're kind of listening to it in a place where somebody who's listening to this on like a home theater type system would be hearing it.
Yeah.
Right? So the really relevant part of the rest of what you've done here is that when you move the frequency range and start eliminating frequency ranges, you're almost emulating what other speakers do.
Yeah.
And that every speaker puts out some portion of this whole frequency range, right?
Yep.
It just might be that, you know, 30 hertz is down 24 dB.
Yep.
And it might be that 1K is up X, Y, Z dB. So if you're moving this range around and listening to different portions of your mix, like ranges, frequency ranges, then ultimately you're kind of emulating the different portions of these other speakers. So if you make sure that between 100 and 500, your mix sounds like your mix, but yeah, obviously it sounds bandpassed, and nothing stands out crazy. Like it's not like a bazillion dB of snare drum or a bazillion dB of like the pick sound off of a bass or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And that means when you play this mix on a speaker where that is the primary frequency range of that speaker, it will sound as best it possibly can on that speaker.
Yeah.
And then you move to another frequency range, same idea. Ultimately, if anything stands out really, really bad in any of these frequency ranges, you go, I need to fix that instrument in that frequency range. There's something in that frequency range in that instrument that is totally out of context.
Yeah. It kind of segues into our next topic, which is we kind of talked about, this has kind of been building up to this a little bit, which is it's impossible to get good mixes in a home studio. by using that method that I showed you guys, which kind of expanded on the subwoofer trick, that has helped me get my home studio recordings, as well as the other things we've been talking about, the references and all that kind of stuff, to sound good in a home studio. Ryan, you do incredible mixes in your home studio. Kenny, you do incredible mixes in your home studio. In
Nice.
fact, I think, what's that?
I said, thanks, bud.
Yeah. So, you can. I think this is another completely false thing, that you can't get good mixes in a home studio. It comes down to the gear, all that stuff that we were talking about before. It kind of funnels into this. So I think this idea, the subwoofer, and it's impossible to get good mixes in a home studio. It's just false. Plenty of people do it, and they're doing it every day. So
Only one of the rooms I've ever been in that I mixed out of had room treatment.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I realize I should probably get more on top of that. But again, it's about learning your gear, and if you know what your room sounds like and know what your speakers sound like,
Yeah.
you'll be able.
And you can see right behind Kenny there, he's got that curtain that I helped him hang up. That helps a lot too. Just taking out
That's
some.
actually my old curtain, isn't it?
I think,
Yep.
Yep, that's mine.
We are a team.
Yep.
cool.
But anyway, yeah.
I think the last one here is an interesting one. It's compression makes sounds bigger. Now, Ryan, you drove this one home, and I did a little bit of experimenting with well, we can just talk about it. So why is this something that you feel is a common misconception about compression? And there's a lot of misconceptions about compression, but why is this one the one that stands out to you?
Because Chris Lord-Alge. The dude's just famous for his collection of compressors, right?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of compressors.
What's that?
He's got a lot of them.
Well, actually, I mean, he's actually famous for his mixes.
Yeah.
But in the audio world, he's famous for his collection of compressors, right?
Yep.
That dude uses a ton of them. That dude's mixes sound huge. Subsequently, compressors equal huge mixes, right? Totally sound logic, right?
Yep. Sounds
Yeah.
great. Yeah. I need all this stuff to make my mixes sound like Chris Lord-Alge. I don't need to be the Chris Lord-Alge. I just need to have his stuff.
So, as a result, a lot of us, when we're early on in mixing, I know I did this. I know for a fact Kenny did this. I assume you did too, Dan.
Yep.
We start really early on putting compressors on things.
Oh,
I'm going to put this on. It's going to make it sound like fucking huge. It's going to make it sound awesome. Rather than thinking about, do I need a compressor? Is the function of a compressor what I want out of this? We just put it on to make it sound quote unquote better.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
And that's wrapped into, this Waves preset has a natural output setting that's a little bit louder when I throw it on, so it just sounds louder, so it must be better, right?
God, I mentioned that too. Yeah.
You can feel it more.
Yeah,
Most
you can.
plugins by Waves
Yeah.
actually have the output set like at least 1.5 dB hotter
Yep. So
just
annoying.
just by turning it on, which means you turn it on, you go, fuck, this shit sounds awesome.
Yep.
And then along the same kind of line of things, all of the Slate plugins, every single one of them has got a boost between 10 and 12K.
Yeah.
Huh.
This sounds better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or at least every single one I've checked against, on a transfer function and FFT and all that. Yeah, there's a boost up there.
It's crazy.
It's probably with that on the VBC when you just turn it on and it's not compressing. That's probably what we're hearing.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's
Probably.
like super clear. Yeah, it's just bright.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's doing something. If it's helping, great. But it's it's not really magic. It's just it's well made, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bashing the plugins. It's just the idea that compression makes things sound better is not necessarily accurate. It's
Yeah.
obviously context based. It's based on need. It's based on level matching. It's based on so much stuff. Yes, I use a shitload of compressors.
yeah, you
But
do.
for the most part, I don't actually use them just to compress. I actually use them for tone shaping and for timing shaping. I don't
Yep.
really use them as compressors. I use the fader as a compressor.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I started doing, I tried to stop using compressors on kick drums just to see how it turns out. And instead of using like a dynamics processor in the form of a compressor on my kick drum, I just started using gates. And the kick drum sounds actually bigger without the compressors, which is Funny
Yeah,
enough.
remember a long time ago when I was like, I don't use compressors on kick drums, and you're like, you're crazy.
Yeah, so I started doing that, and then I tried throwing. So then I tried like getting the same sound out of the kick drum with like a bus compressor on like the kick all group, you know.
Yeah.
And I was fucking around with settings on the API 2500 just because it's a really great compressor. And the only thing that I could really get it to do was just sound have a different shape to it, but the actual shape wasn't what I was going for. It just sounded. It didn't sound huge. It just sounded a certain way. So like on this kick drum. This kick drum sounds, it's like a big 80s rock kick, right? So it's like, right? Got this. It's got this. All the processing on the acoustic kick. It's pretty low. You guys probably can't hear it.
That's low end, basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's just low end, right? But then on the actual sample, all that's right here, it sounds bigger with just some EQ and a gate.
Nice and tight and clean.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I was trying, and after realizing that I was getting the sound I wanted without using the compressor, I was like, oh shit, it sounds pretty awesome. So I just stopped using it, and the first compressor that hits the kick drum is the one on the drum all, or the drums all bus, and that's it. It's kind of crazy, but that idea is pretty interesting. And the same goes for that vocal technique that we were talking about at the very beginning of this class when I was killing time waiting for these two schmucks. I was showing the guys the pencil tool trick again that we did last week with the vocal. That is corrective compression, but there's no compressor used. So it's making it sound controlled, big, awesome, professional, not using a compressor at all. So
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, compression making things sound bigger. It can make it sound more dense.
Yeah.
Usually when people are using stereo compressors, when they're actually in linked stereo mode, you're actually often collapsing the stereo image by getting non-centered compression. So if you've got something happening loudly on the left side, if you're in a linked stereo compressor, it compresses both sides, left and right, which for a moment makes it feel more mono, and then it expands back out. So in that case, compression actually makes it sound smaller.
it's true.
It does.
Yeah. So we have gone about a half hour over how much time we typically go in Mix Wednesday, but that's because we wanted to get through some awesome topics and show you guys.
We love you.
And show you guys some things that we have found that are common misconceptions about the audio world. So we hope that this kind of presentation about this kind of stuff helps you guys make better decisions about what you're doing in your own mix world. Or, you know, maybe you already knew this stuff and you're a pro and you don't need to come to Mix Wednesday. Who knows? But
If you know everything, you're definitely not a pro.
Exactly. That's the other misconception.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, if you guys know of any, you know, myths that you hear from people and, you know, you just want to just talk about them, feel free to post them on the Facebook group. Also, feel free to post any of the stuff you're working on, any of the questions you have, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Sounds good, guys. So with that, we'll see you guys next week with a pretty big announcement, a big fun thing that we're doing. And yeah, stay tuned. It's going to be probably take up all of the end of July and beginning of August. So we're excited about it, and we're excited to bring it to you. So stay tuned.
Like that, you might as well just tell them what it is.
No, I'm not going. I want to leave them wanting more.
God damn, you're such a tease. That's like such a blue ball.
Well,
You're
you have
a
one.
blue ball.
Do you have one ball, Brian?
Blue
Is that
ball.
why you just said blue ball in singular?
It's a blue ball.
Well, I mean, it would be weird to say it is a blue balls.
No, you call me a blue baller.
You blue balls to them.
You blue balls them. How's that?
Okay.
You being blue ball.
We're having a mix contest. We're going to be starting it next week, and
Oh,
there's a lot of
God,
cool
he's telling
stuff, a lot of cool prizes, and a lot of cool people we're working with. So we're excited to share that with you next week.
Now we fucked up and let the cat out of the bag. Fucked up.
No, we didn't fuck up.
Now you fucked up, dude. You weren't
No,
supposed
I
to
Oh, okay. Anyways, we're going to be starting a mix contest next week, but there's way more to it than that, and we're excited to show you guys and talk to you guys about it. Anyways, till then, we'll see you guys next week, and remember, go fucking mix. Bye, guys.
tell.
Have fun. See ya.
Peace.